Drowned in a sea of lies, I found myself gasping for the truth. The revelation hit me like a freight train. My spouse, the keeper of my heart, entangled in a web of deception. How could you? I questioned, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on my chest. Every whispered, "I love you," from her lips now felt like venom, poisoning what we once had. Through the pain, the anger, and the disbelief, I embarked on a journey to find myself amidst the ruins of trust. This is my story. Enjoy watching it. She was my biggest love, like a queen. She had the skin of an African American and was the most stunning among the women I called wife. Scarves tied her arms to the bed's top, and ribbons tied her legs to the bottom posts. The ties kept her arms and legs straight. The ties were like a picture of marriage, that deep and important bond we took on. Our love was huge, too much. Almost to say some loves are too big for us to fully get, so they must be kept secret. A promise that was true even if seen by just one, but still held us tight. Her arms reached out wide. Her body said, "I am yours, take me. I love what you do. I love you." She whispered it soft. My hand was on her neck, feeling her breath. Her eyes were open wide, full of love. Eager love shone. I could get lost in those dark eyes. I saw myself in them. I was with her. We were one. She felt me completely with joy and want. And she opened her mouth, a silent cry of joy. Quiet. Her head moved side to side as joy took over. She pulled at the ties. And I sighed too. Done. Then she relaxed, a time that wouldn't come again. And I rested too. The night went by. It was May, the 5th month with my 8th wife. It was wild. This love I had only felt with a few women before was like with Lorna in January, the 1st month and first wife in Independence. Lorna was blonde, tall, and big, a farm girl from South Africa who liked my company, and love grew from there. She took me with a power that left me drained that night, and I was glad to satisfy her. I left her sleeping, and our marriage was, of course, a success. In February, it was Beanley, a lovely and tiny woman from the East who touched me like none of my other wives. That was the Branson job. She welcomed me fully that night, again and again. She called out for more in her language, and we reached new highs. Beanley, the name of the 2nd prime in the alphabet. A sweet, dear memory. March was windy, and Carol came into my life in Minnesota. She was a librarian and hid her beauty behind shyness with glasses. I found it. We married, and her kisses were sweet like strawberries. Her hair was light brown, her skin was a bit red and had spots I liked. I recall sitting with her in a dark cinema, hidden in a corner, kissing her red lips and touching her without others seeing. We forgot our worries and got married fast. I was meant to be with Carol, and she with me. Marriage lasts forever, even after death. March, the 3rd month, and Carol will always be a special memory. She was the ideal woman, the perfect wife. In May, I found love again in St. Louis, almost home. With each wife, my love grew, changed, and was fulfilled. Ellie was lively, with bright eyes and a playful way. Ellie and I tried out love toys, and she loved one machine especially. It made her very happy, and I was there with her. She shouted with joy, and then fell asleep on me. I woke her up once in the night to show her love again with hugs and gentle touches. Ellie will be remembered for her energy and love. I loved her, and she loved me. Then there was Jennifer in July. She wanted us to be close right away and had new ideas, but we never got to try them as she fell asleep in the middle of our happiness, tied by only hands. She kissed me and asked for more until she was too tired. I'll always think of Jennifer with July and its warm, fun nights. She was a very good woman. As I moved through the months and letters, I found I could love more and more, especially one woman at a time. Love gets stronger over time. It's not just for fun. The bedroom is a special place for love to grow and meet our basic needs. That's how it was with Karen in November in Kansas City, Kansas. Karen was older than me by about 15 years, but so beautiful, with hair turning gray. I remember our first and only kiss. Her tongue met mine strongly as I held her, and she moved close. Karen loved being close more than anyone I've known. Our time together was about discovering what we each liked. Karen was bold, and our time together was intense. Karen was almost too much for me, if that's even possible. A stunning lady. The 13th letter and month just 2 months off. I was still getting over it, thinking about Karen and November with a lot of feeling. But then came Mindy, the January bride I'd always hoped for. Dark hair, not too tall or short, dressed in black with rings and ink all over. I'd never thought I'd fall for this type and even marry one. It was all so quick. Met one day, wed the same day with no regrets. There were rings and rods to play with, designs to follow. I was gentle with her, which took her by surprise, and she chose to wear a gag to mute her shouts of joy. We used chains for her hands and feet, and around her neck too, and it was all new to me. Our time was short, but she slept peacefully afterwards, showing she was content in every way. I loved her tattoo saying property of Mindy with a symbol for the 13th letter. I took breaks during the non-prime numbers, then I met Queenly. Queenly was different. Even among all these unique ones, she stood out, tall and slim, always smiling, uplifting. Then, in bed, she became wild, honest, and pure in a way the others weren't. I've loved all 8 wives, but Queenly was a goddess among them. Her love was clear and her desire unstoppable. Queenly, the best. 2 months to 19. Letter S, July, I remember. Love and marriage. 8 wives, yet no law broken. Morals matter in family and elsewhere. It's a pattern, I said on the phone. Josh Mitchell had his gun and holster in the drawer. It's all about primes. He targets in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 11th, 13th, and 17th month. He matches letters to the months and does the same for the women's names. Usually, he strangles them, though Karen, the first one, had her neck broken. If he keeps to this pattern, it'll be a woman with an S name in July. July is the 19th month since he began a year and a half ago. S is the 19th letter. No, I didn't work it out myself. It was my wife, Linda. She loves puzzles, and I mentioned the case. It's been in all the papers. We've got DNA, emails, but no clue who he is. No match in the databases, no fingerprints. He just started taking lives and never stopped. One upside. The gaps between prime numbers get bigger as they increase. All right, I'll get back to it. Mitchell had strong feelings against criminals. He couldn't stand those who harm others. Most cops saw things as right or wrong. You stole or you didn't. You killed or you didn't. You dealt drugs or you didn't. They saw the world this way because that was their belief. But for him, apart from his wife, Linda, it was not so clear. Linda was special. She was probably the only woman around who could have ended up with him since he could see the mist from his bedroom. Many women might have loved him if he was into girls from Illinois, but he wasn't. Being with Linda Mitchell meant he didn't look at any other woman. Linda was all he needed. Even if the 6th Fleet came by and she was interested, which she wasn't, Linda was fine with him. He looked after her, and she looked after Josh. But he didn't trust her. Women like Linda got attention from men, but he was sure she was only his. Right then, Linda Mitchell was in a motel just over the Mississippi, within view from her bedroom window if anyone had binoculars. Her legs were wide open while her lover, Paul Pereno, was with her as hard as he could. Linda liked being with Pereno because he wasn't a cop, wasn't silly, wasn't married, and didn't care about her as a person. She wanted to have sex, and her husband was busy being a cop. So she called Paul and asked if he wanted to. Of course he did. So they did it. It happened about once a month. Perino didn't even have her number, but he caught her eye, so she called when she wanted him. It worked out to once this month, none the next. She felt a bit of guilt, but actually she just thought she should feel guilty, so maybe that was what guilt was. This was the 7th time, she thought. She probably should stop calling him once her husband got promoted. But that hadn't happened yet. He had been saying it would happen soon for 5 years. He just wasn't very bright. She figured, "Paul, do it. I love it," she said, without much emotion. And he heard, "Only you are the best." But he did his best, and her long, smooth legs were something rare for a man to find. But that was becoming less of a secret as word got out. Linda was a very beautiful woman. In this factory town, now more like a 1.5 factory town because of closures, Linda was beautiful, world-class, with a bit of makeup to cover the sunspot on her cheek. That same sunspot Josh found cute and wished she wouldn't cover. A few guys at the DA's office knew Perino was with her, and even knew she was a cop's wife. But instead of telling him or speaking up, they just wished they were in his shoes. Well, All but Joseph Martin, who wouldn't spill on someone's private life for anything, sticking to his morals like they meant something these days. He'd only speak up if it messed with work, which he still saw as a serious job. Today, he was stepping in for Paul Perino, who was tied up, taking the chance to be with Linda. Martin was off to court for a drug case he had just heard about. Now it was getting in the way of work. Finally, Paul got his fill with Linda, reaching the end of their time together in room 105 at the Elegant Rooms Motel, drenched in sweat while Linda thought, "I've hit rock bottom. Now I'm going to feel this for hours. His sweat is all over me. Yuck." She thought she should enjoy this more. Something felt off. She couldn't shake it. Her husband was on her mind. Josh was grown, but he looked after her. Yet this felt good in the moment, just like a strong drink, and she just hid the mess with tissues. It was fun at the time. She told herself it was worth it, not wrong. She wasn't cheap or bad, and it wasn't an issue with Josh. She got dressed as Perino rolled out of bed to pick up his phone. Paul then got a call to see his boss, someone real important, not just pretending. Perino tried to play it cool, leaving for work. He didn't know his boss had figured it all out, where he was, who with, and what they were up to. He dressed, feeling good. He'd swapped Linda for some court job and raced to meet his boss. As Perino fixed up at the police station, Josh Mitchell got called in by the captain just a few steps away. Josh was there in no time. "I got a call from the DA about your wife. She's one of a kind, most beautiful in miles." Josh beamed with pride. "She works hard." Josh felt like he'd been hit. The captain was straight up, no messing around. Mitchell stood there for a bit, then had to sit. "Sorry, sir, had to sit down." "No worries." He is called Paul Perino by the DA, a younger guy Josh thinks meets up with once or maybe twice a month. Perino might lose his job soon, in part because of this and also because he's started to act too full of himself and has stopped keeping the affair a secret. He's not well liked anymore. The DA mentioned that he's shirking work, often vanishes. Could be he's got another side thing as well. Mitchell was unsure of his next move. "You can't make things worse for her," the boss said, reading Josh's mind. "You're not the first cop to deal with this mess. One of the guys, Wife 3 Kraus, is in between marriages because he cheated, and some men actually manage to mend things and keep their marriage. Just keep your cool." "Can I head home? Need someone to accompany you?" "No, I've taken hits before, just never expected one from her." He admitted feeling angry and foolish. The boss offered a look trying to show support, though it could easily be seen as pity. He wasn't great at showing emotion. Mitchell made his way home, took a wrong turn, yet still arrived before his wife. She had to take a longer route to cross the Miss, going past where Josh worked. As for him, it was a direct path to their suburb. But he diverted unexpectedly and had to circle the block. Once home, he made coffee and sat in the kitchen. Linda came in 15 minutes later. "Oh, you're here. Didn't think you'd be," she noted upon seeing him. She went straight in for a kiss, then tried to head upstairs for a shower, visibly uncomfortable with a bunch of tissues tucked between her legs. "Sit down, Linda," was all he said, in a tone more suited for managing a crowd than showing affection. Her upbringing clashed with sudden fear. Surely he couldn't know, she thought. To her, he was simple, easygoing. "Please sit. Is something wrong, Josh?" Now truly worried, she took a seat at the table's end. "Perino's about to be sacked because he's been sleeping with you." She gasped, wanting to deny, to plead for his trust. "How could you think that?" But she played ignorant, a standard move when caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" she blurted, immediately regretting it. She knew Josh. Josh wouldn't accuse without proof. Head in hands, she faced the music. "How long?" he pressed. Realizing the game was up, she didn't lie. 5, 6 months, once or twice a month, only when you were busy or out. He was just someone, a pastime, just for fun. It was never about love, just a fling, a handsome guy with no strings attached. Josh clenched his fists, examining them closely. She looked at him, but he avoided her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you." She said it. She was the 1 billionth woman ever. She joked that she may have won free food for life if she was the 1 billionth of something else. "Of course not." "Don't worry about it," he said, not happy. And she knew her mistake wasn't small. Why did she think it was okay, she thought? Can they fix this? Save their marriage? How many others? We've been married, what, 7? No, 8 years? No others. Josh, I don't know why I did it. Was he better? Better built? Bigger? No, nothing like that. Worse, actually. But even bad sex is something. He just looked at her and she knew her last words didn't help. She stayed quiet. Being careful is part of being brave. It's also part of being smart and other good things. He looked out the small kitchen window at the blue sky, feeling sad. He said out loud, I feel so ashamed, so angry, so hurt. I never knew it felt this way. I've seen other hurt husbands lots of times and told them to stay calm and didn't know the deep pain they felt. I saw it but didn't understand. It's crushing. He talked as if his own hurt would make him better at his job. A better police officer now that he found out his wife cheated on him. He should thank her, he thought, but not really. It's real. I can feel the pain. It's like a doctor could take it out. Quiet. He looked at her. Do you want me to go? She asked. Or do you want to leave? She tried to feel sorry for cheating, for betraying him. No, nothing there. Josh wouldn't cheat on her, she knew. And if he did, she'd think about it then. Did you do it here? She asked. Not here. Who knows? He asked. No one unless they saw us going into the hotel. Maybe people he works with noticed he was gone during the day. Josh rubbed his hand, but Linda knew he wouldn't hit her. The wall, the table, the fridge were more likely to get hit. You can stay. I don't know what to do. The boss got a call from the drug enforcement, told him about you and Perino and sent me home to sort it with you. But I don't know what I want. Linda got up and made a cup of coffee in the machine. She sat back down. Will we make it, Josh? She asked. I don't see how, he said. Maybe. No, I don't know. Did she want to fix things? Would she just do the same again? He wanted to shake her now. Maybe he could get her to see a doctor if he could just stop himself from being so mad. It gave him an idea. Playing tricks was more something she did well, but it was a way to do it. Love, I'm going to the car. Stay here. He went to the garage, found the file on the bad man, and brought it to the table. Josh took a deep breath. The boss liked your main guess about the bad man. Why was he talking about this? Was he trying to stay in charge by talking about work? Linda said nothing but thought about it. This is the file on the bad man. Look at where the bad things happened. All the papers. See if you can guess where he will strike next month when he's due to strike again. Just look at it now. You want me to look into your case now? She asked. She was puzzled. She'd done it before. Looked at a case once, it led to catching someone. More often it did not. Yeah, just that. And nothing more. Had her affair not mattered. Now that he thought about it, she could not understand. She was sure he loved her. Truly loved her. She saw the emotion and realized she cared for his pain rather than feeling any of her own. Are you okay, Josh? He shook his head. I want to shoot you. I want to strangle you. I want to sleep with you. But I know you probably have him in you. I can't deal with you now. So you look at the file and I'll get myself under control. I don't know if I can focus on paperwork. Josh just looked at her as if he was going to do one of the first 2 things he listed. Okay, I'll look. She agreed. She opened the file and started spreading pages around the table. Josh sat for a few minutes thinking about her in the situation. He made another coffee, saw his hands shake, and watched his fingers open. He dropped the cup, which broke on the floor. Linda jumped in her seat. Sorry, I'll clean it up. You keep looking. He used paper towels and a mop. But when he was done, the floor felt sticky. He made another cup and sat down watching her work. Linda put aside thoughts of love and Josh and all of it and looked harder at the file. Just another puzzle, she thought. It was where the bad things happened that caught her eye. She looked at the locations. There was something there. It was like when you see a few moves ahead in chess and know you will win. She looked at the DNA reports, the dates, the color of the bad man's hair, dark brown, shoe size, probably a 16, a neck tag found beside one of the victims. Nothing. 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 Back to the map. Independence, Twain, East St. Louis, nowhere, Minnesota. She was about to ignore that last, but it stayed in her mind. No. What is that town really, Wyckoff? Nowhere. Must be a crossroads, probably. Why did he kill a girl from Wyckoff? How did he meet her? There is nothing there, but Linda knew the name. Why did she know the name? She shut her eyes tight and thought hard about what she knew of rural Minnesota. It took her a full minute before she had a clear image of her dad getting a strike. A bowling place. There's one in Wyckoff, actually part of a pub and grill. Her father played matches there 20 years ago. He was skilled, but never won a big match. He had driven up a week before to a match, the last one before her mom left them. That's why the name was familiar to her. But why did she bed Perino? He looked good, and didn't see anything wrong with bedding someone, that was certain. But he was mean. She knew, had always known, and she thought that gave her an edge. She knew. Her thoughts drifted to the case. Focus on the case. No. Lay them out in the order they happened. All unrelated. South African white girl, tween Asian girl, Wyckoff librarian, St. Louis, sex toys, East St. Louis, Guinevere, Kansas City, Kansas, older woman, Twain Gothic, Paducah, Kentucky, black girl Y2 and Twain. There's a bridge here, a factory making wood cupboards, panels, pressed wood for floors and walls, 35,000 people. Quick food, 2 hotels, she thought and frowned, recalling both. Another small town across the river with 1 hotel. Paducah. What's in Paducah? Linda leaned back and shut her eyes again. She could usually spot links in things. She seemed to hold on to small details that others missed. She'd forget the army base outside town, but recall they had 24 traffic lights. Forget the hospital and recall the history of the founder. For some reason, she stored things in memory better than others, and at times, worse, her mom got annoyed by her bad grades at school. She held on to almost everything others forgot, but then connected them oddly. She could solve any maths problem, but not how she was taught. She didn't add up. She grouped things and counted. It made her slow, but usually correct. It wasn't the way to do well in tests. But the year they figured out her issue, she'd got 3 of 11 problems right. But she'd only tackled 3. She thought of her mom and how her dad cried when he read her note. She wondered if her mom knew how much she'd hurt him as Linda had just hurt Josh. But Josh was strong, right? Linda felt a tightness inside since Josh had spoken to her, and as she pictured the inside of her eyelids, she realized it was either guilt or fear, pity for Josh or something. She knew she'd wronged someone who didn't deserve it, and she knew he'd never move past it. In a way, it mattered to her. Odd that. Josh's love was pure. He loved her fully, like all men do, and how all women want to be loved. Why did she mess around with that guy? Why didn't she care about the love bit? Paducah has a big place for wood panel selling, big in this part of the country. So, Twain had a big maker and some small ones, too. Wyckoff had none. "I need my laptop," she told Josh. He nodded. She was back in a tick. Typed Wyckoff into Wikipedia. "There are 444 folk living there." She took another moment and rang a number on her phone. "Hello? I'm ringing about the old bowling place you've got. Can't find it online." She listened a bit. "When was that?" She nodded. She jotted down a date. "What happened to the lanes?" After a bit. "Do you know who bought the wood?" she asked. "Cheers. Any other business?" "No." "Okay, Ta. I think I'm on to something." "Josh, I think I get it." She realized he was lost in thought about them. "I'm so sorry." "Really? I've backed you up. You stayed home to write, sold some stories, but I've kept us afloat," he said without much thought, as if his world was falling apart. She knew it was. She'd feel bad about that later. She was sure I wanted a family. But you kept putting it off for that novel. He shook his head. He truly did love her. Odd thought that someone could love her. When did she stop loving him? Had she? Did she ever love, really? When did she start thinking he was daft? Why? He picked himself up. "So, what's your thought about the sex offender? I reckon he's in the wood business. Twain, Paducah. They've got wood-selling spots, panel works, and cellars. In Twain, it's mostly just the factory and panel bit, but the panel bit is much smaller. I reckon Wyckoff hangs on to it. I think he's got his hands in moving bowling lanes. Wyckoff's only got 400 folk and a few more around. Their victim was the library lass. She went to another town for work. Anyway, the month before the murder, their bowling place was knocked down. The lanes sold off first. Lanes are well wanted in some spots for new floors, wall panels, good quality, very tough. I need to check Independence and Casey yet. But I'm guessing someone either bought the wood our bloke was selling, or he's found more wood for sale from another alley that's been knocked down. Something like that, maybe. He might check on places. I think there's something in each spot just before he finishes his murder job. He finds the girl, kills her, and moves on. He probably picks them from places with no cams. If he spots a security setup, he just finds another spot. She looked deep in thought. He might use the library to find girls with the right name. Not sure, but that could work. You might want to check here with the factory and panel places. They might know him, even if he doesn't work for them or has had contact. So do you have any guess on where he might go next month? I think he's doing a job in that town now. So look for a bowling alley being knocked down or sold, or someone putting in a special floor, and then check the buyer or sellers. I bet he just stays around for a bit. He doesn't want to rush. He knows all the evidence has piled up. But you've got no record of him. How does he just stay around? We've checked hotels and got nothing. Maybe he has a camper. Lots of camping, even near towns. He wouldn't be too obvious, right? Hardly any problem signing in? Check. Some camping sites are free, and they don't even ask you to sign in or for tent camping in a national forest. Free again, and hardly any check or sign in. Or he could park in a Walmart lot near the trucks, down a quiet dirt road anywhere. She looked down. I'm off for a shower. Can we chat more later? She knew those were the right things to say. Yes, she did. She watched Hallmark Channel a bit. I bet you are, Josh said, looking straight at her, feeling the hurt, knowing she felt nothing. She left the room and went upstairs. Josh had figured out not long after they were married that she didn't feel like other women. It had taken him a few months to see. She thought she had tricked him into marrying her. She didn't think she needed him. She wasn't worried about losing him. She didn't love him in any normal way. She's a sociopath of some kind, he'd realized, and it explained the lack of emotion at times when most would feel something. She'd taken her dad's death as just a fact, almost like it didn't hit her, as if it mattered none that the man who spent his whole grown life looking after her, who held her and was maybe not perfect in trying to be both dad and mum to her, but who loved her in that full and complete way dads can love daughters. Maybe that caused it. Some sort of mixed signal, likely started by her mum leaving. He remembered her odd emotional distance. Another time she rang him once 2 years back and said she was driving to the hospital. She was having a miscarriage. The child he'd wanted so much that they had put off for years was gone. He got to her room before the surgery and she was in bed, looking at a magazine. She was bothered by cramping but didn't seem worried. Josh had given her a kiss, and that was it. She seemed easygoing and even asked if he'd like to try making a recipe she saw. They could think about having a baby again someday, but she planned to go back on birth control when the doctor said it was okay for now. He once saw her really into watching a rugby player break his leg on TV. It made Josh feel sick, but she watched it over and over in slow motion. He wondered why she chose to marry him. Did she see something in him that reminded her of her dad? Did she think marrying him would make it easy to get support while she wrote her book? Could someone who might not feel things deeply write a book that shows real emotions? Did being honest mean anything to her? Could she stay true to just one person? Did he really want kids with someone who might not be able to love in the usual way? Was there any real meaning to her moral views? Her personality was very focused. It was as if she'd learned how to act and feel in any situation by watching others. And then she'd just do that. She seemed genuine in many ways. This might explain why she spent nearly 10 years writing a book he'd never seen, happy to live off his support. She didn't even seem to worry about Perino now, and her care for Josh felt shallow, like she was just acting because she knew she was supposed to. Maybe she was scared of losing Josh's support, which might mean she'd have to get a job. He knew she didn't truly love the other guy or any guy. He knew this problem wouldn't just disappear. He'd wanted her to see a psychologist for a long time, but didn't know how to make her agree. Now he felt stuck between giving her a choice. See a psychologist or psychiatrist, or they'd have to end the marriage tomorrow. Either way, it might not even matter. He saw his marriage falling apart, like a train derailing. He slept in the spare room, the one he'd hoped to turn into a child's room. He got in touch with Twain Wood Building Products, the biggest business in town since the aircraft factory closed. He talked with some of the marketing and production bosses. 3 of them named the same guy when he asked about bowling lanes. This man bought old bowling lanes to sell to home builders and those fixing up houses. Some folks love that kind of wood in their homes, and he had found a special market for it. His name was Michael Juvenile, and Josh couldn't find him on any criminal records or DNA databases. But they had a simple way to talk about him. About 5'10", a bit skinny with thin glasses, Dark brown hair parted to his right, dark eyes, and he used his right hand, which they knew from the crimes. He wore black trainers and easy clothes, often a coat with no tie, short-sleeved shirts in the warm months. One person thought he had a Mustang. Another thought it was a Dodge Charger. He looked up the records and found a car plate in Missouri, an address south of St. Louis, and a Mustang. He checked the address online. He then rang the local council of the areas where the crimes happened. For building, fixing up homes, and taking down bowling alleys, you need permission. He found a bowling alley about to get taken down in a week, not in those areas, but one across the river from Twain in Illinois. He got in touch with the sheriff of Pike County for his thoughts. Sheriff Jones. I'm Josh Mitchell, a detective from Twain. What can I do for you, Josh? The sheriff of a small area probably didn't have many deputies, so Josh was glad to talk to the boss. I'm looking into a series of very bad crimes. I have a guess. Yeah, a lead. We haven't had trouble here, but do you think it's linked? I have no proof, nothing solid. But you have a bowling alley being taken down soon. Yeah. You think they're linked? The sheriff asked. Yeah. I have someone helping me who thinks the guy might be into buying and selling old bowling alley floors. I have a name. A man named Michael Juvenile who might be after the floors there. I'd like to come over and see if he's around. He's not in any of the usual records. Can't even find an address close by. Mike Juvenile. Never heard of him. Why don't you come over and we'll head there? It's out in the sticks at a small crossroads. They've not started yet. Permissions just went out. I'll be there first thing in the morning. Hey, Josh, the helper is your wife. Caught you. It's not that weird for a wife to help her detective husband. Yeah, she's good at solving problems. Bring her along if you want. Not sure that's a smart move. Josh went home and saw Linda at her computer at the kitchen table, hard at work. He wondered if she was really trying to write a book. Hi, love, she said. He sat down and said, Linda, I've made up my mind. I'm ready to keep trying with our marriage a bit longer. As long as you keep seeing a psychologist or psychiatrist starting as soon as we can book it. You mean a marriage guide, right? She asked. Not quite. I'm thinking more of a mind doctor or brain doctor. If one knows a lot about marriage issues too, that would work. But I want you to see one for you. She was really angry. You think I cheated because I'm mad? No. I think you're without feeling for others. Which made her pause because she could spot the signs in herself. She knew she didn't feel like others did. And she was clever in odd ways. Where others would feel sad now, she would guess they might feel happy. Now she understood. Josh went on. Take it or leave it. I need to know if living with you is possible. I needed your faithfulness. I need it always. You are the most lovely woman around. Men will keep coming on to you. I need to know if you can be faithful, always. If you don't say yes to this now, I will talk to a lawyer and start a divorce tomorrow. She didn't like being pushed into a corner, but saying yes would at least keep her comfortable life going for now, so she agreed. I gave her a list of 5 brain doctors. She checked them out online and picked a woman. Josh called right away and booked them in for 2 days from then in the morning. Linda, I want you to come to work with me tomorrow. I'm going across the river to Pike County, where they're pulling down a bowling alley in a week. The sheriff even said you might want to come. Maybe you'll see something. She was surprised. Josh said aside from bringing back cases for you to help me think of new ideas, I've kept my job separate. I'm not sure if there's a rule against this. But since I'm testing your theory and you might discover something, I decided to just go for it and face any issues later. If you'll join, I'm in. It could be fun. Josh wondered if she had another reason for going. They drove across the Twain Trans-Mississippi Bridge at 7 the next morning. At 7:45, they were in Sheriff Jones's office, having Starbucks coffee and talking about the case. Sheriff Jones. His guess, please. When he saw Linda, felt the young one might show up at the alley but was more likely to do his deal at the real estate guy's office, a man named Bob Jones, who was the sheriff's brother. Called Bob last night to check who the realtor was, and he said it was him. He's stopping by soon to chat about possible buyers. He mentioned someone contacted him about buying the wood, but he couldn't recall the man's name. He has his card, though. We don't come here much, Linda said, skipping the fact she'd been in the posh rooms a day before. So tell us, where would a guy find a victim? Jones thought. There are bars, a club that's open to anyone most nights, places to eat, lots of churches. Josh hadn't thought of churches. We think the next attack could be next month if he sticks to his pattern. It's usually a week after he's done with his work. We also think he'll go for a girl with an S in her first name. We guess that he picks his victims from where he works, plans how to do it, then either follows her or starts his plan. They are killed in their homes. One was in an empty building in the woods. Linda said, I think he finds them in bars. All the other victims went to bars before they were killed. Even Wyckoff, the librarian. She lived above a bar but hardly ever went down. Josh asked, which bar is he likely to go to, if he doesn't know Pike well and his work is at the real estate and the bowling place? Julie Saloon is out of town on a small road, but it's the biggest hit with the locals here. Shady Grove is in town. Not posh, but it draws a lot of women on Friday nights. Probably Shady Grove. Yeah, he said. Bob, the sheriff's brother, walked into the office. Together they could easily break a sofa. Both guys were big, around 300 each. They had the kind of happy faces some big people have. Hi, Bob, Jones, the estate agent, said, smiling and offering his hand to Linda. Bob was quick to see what mattered. Being big didn't stop him from hoping when he met a beautiful woman unexpectedly. Linda Mitchell, she said, offering her hand. Josh Mitchell. Josh introduced himself and they shook hands after Bob eventually let go of Linda's hand. So, you're looking into someone wanting to buy the lanes? He asked. Yes, just a guess. Probably nothing, I said. It's often best to play down things to not raise hopes or scare the suspect off. That's cop talk for you. Some guy came while I was out, said he'd take the lanes. He bought them from the owners a few days back, left his card with a note, said he'd take the lanes out by Friday, Bob Jones said. Owner said he got a good deal, didn't know if Juvenile would be here, said he hired a company to remove the lanes. Has anyone touched the card? Josh asked. Maybe they could find a fingerprint. Actually, yes, my secretary and I have. I have it here, he said. He pulled it out of a folder. Sheriff Jones got a small evidence bag and told his brother to drop it in. I didn't think we'd find much on the card, but maybe we would. Is that serious? Bob asked. Yeah, the most, Josh said. So the group ended up at the bowling place. Bob had a key, so they went in. Everything not stuck to the building had been sold. The floors usually had to wait when there was no money. It was a small, dark place that smelled of old cigarettes and beer. All the furniture was gone, sold or thrown away. The machines were sold too, even though they were old. Josh and the sheriff looked around for a bit. Linda talked to Bob in her charming way. The lanes looked like good floors and walls. They went to Bob's office hoping the guy would turn up. Linda spoke to Josh when Bob left to do some tasks because his secretary was sick. Why don't I dress up and spend some time at the Shady Grove tonight? Maybe the guy will show up. I'll use my middle name. You can watch over me. Her middle name is Susan. Yeah, another beautiful one, Josh thought. He knew the boss might not like it, but it was outside his area, and Linda wouldn't be in much danger with Josh close by. He liked the idea. Maybe the guy would approach her. It was a long shot, but they had no better idea. So at 4, they went to tell the sheriff about their undercover plan at the Grove, and Linda got ready for the night. She wore tight jeans and a tight top that stood out. She wore a brown one, like one the other girl's last scene was wearing. Josh set up an emergency button on her phone and checked the GPS just in case. Don't leave the place with him, do you understand? Don't get in a car. Make your stand right there. As soon as we get his DNA and your prints, we have enough. You leave alone. I'll watch him a bit more to make sure he doesn't follow. And then I'll leave. Meet at the car. He's probably just looking around trying to find an S name. He might not come over if he finds your name. Don't leave with him. And once he knows you're Sue, he might not even try to meet. He could follow to see where you go or live. Linda was laughing. I understand. I won't leave with him. Josh spoke to the bartender about their plan. He agreed to help, but nothing happened that night. Linda sat at the bar and turned away other guys. At last, it was 11:40, and they gave up. Josh and Linda's first meeting with Dr. Carly Ray turned into a long talk for Linda. For the first hour, Josh was there. She asked why they needed help. Josh said he would ask for a split if Linda didn't get help. In that time, Josh spoke about Linda's affair and her odd ways with examples. Linda said he thinks I'm cold-hearted. After an hour, the doc asked him to step out as she wanted to chat more with Linda. 2.5 hours later, she called him back. Dr. Ray. Linda has said it's okay to share everything we spoke about. I can tell you my thoughts on her personality, character, and her mental health. I'm a psychiatrist, which means I can give meds to aid in her treatment." She looked straight at Josh. Linda kept her eyes down. "In my view, your wife isn't cold-hearted. Her issue has a long name, but to put it simply, she does have a conscience. She knows right from wrong. Yet, she's faced so much emotional harm that she thinks any good thing for her is owed due to past pain. She can love, but she puts up walls, like not feeling guilty about the affair, not minding if her lover gets hurt, and so on. She does have feelings, and it might hit her suddenly one day, the hurt she's brought to you, him, and herself. She might start crying out of the blue, realizing the hurt she's caused and feeling that pain as if it just happened. That's not a bad sign. It's a turning point, but it might show in different ways, subtly, or not at all." The doc stopped. Josh said, "She's really clever, doctor. Are you sure she's not fooling you? She thinks she's the smartest person anywhere." The doc smiled. "Luckily, I'm okay not being the smartest in the room. No, I don't believe she's fooling either of us. She does love you, but that love gets buried sometimes." The doc thought for a moment. Being direct is often her way. Talking to her was easy. She freely shares info with someone she trusts, and talking to me seemed without barriers, as far as I could tell. Can she love kids? I mentioned the lost baby. Yes, she can, once we get her to open up a bit. There are cases where this has happened with the birth of a child. We can treat her condition. Both group and one-to-one chats help a lot. There are a bunch of meds that can assist. This feels a bit like madness in some ways, an emotional split. The same meds can make a person feel just fine, but it's a long-term thing. It can get less over time, and her true feelings can take over. But there'll be some odd times along the way. Was I wrong to think this is because of a double trap? Probably mom leaving and dad not being able to be warm or caring. No, that was right, likely with some stuff before her mom went. "And if she wants to tell you, there's a lot more she's kept from everyone," Linda said. "I don't want a divorce, Josh. I knew the affair was a mistake." Dr. Carley said, "You forgot something, Linda." Linda looked as if she didn't recall. The putting down, seeing you as less. "I'm sorry for that, too," Dr. Carley said. "Part of this comes with any affair. Thinking the husband's a fool, that kind of thing. It's all about guilt. That's actually a good sign from your wife. It shows she feels sorry." "Yeah, I've seen a lot of that in family fights," Josh said. "Dr. Carley, you should know, Josh, that the marriage means a lot to her. She always thought it would fail, and this might have been her way to make it happen. She thinks she can sway you by winning your love, tricking you into marrying and some twisted thinking. She has the lover. Others married her because I loved her. There was no trick. She knows she's clever and that others are not." As Dr. Carley smiled, "Losing you would be hard for her, but she expects it. She doesn't want it, but her feelings hide it. So she loves me loads, but she keeps it a secret because she thinks it will end in pain with me leaving. So she makes it happen. Her biggest fear." Josh thought about it. If we split, would she get worse? Maybe a bit of a drop, but not much worse after a while. She sort of expects it. It's your call, Josh. Do you want to stay with her? Has she messed it up already? Can you get past those images and fears in your head? Ray looked straight at him. She knew how a man in love can fixate on his wife's affair and never stop. "Have you seen many with this issue? Doctor, this mix of signs is probably a once-in-a-lifetime thing for most of us. Except in a clinic or mental ward. Josh said maybe you could write an article on her care." He said it with a bit of a sneer. "Being cynical isn't nice." The doctor laughed, and I'm thinking about it. I'd need everyone to agree, so don't worry. You'd have time to think and you could say no. It was on the 4th visit to the Shady Grove that they found their guy. It was the first week of July. The floor was ripped out in a day at the alley and taken to the next spot. Juvenile got paid without even showing up at the alley or estate agent. Linda, who called herself Sue, was attractive. She wore too much eye makeup, like women often do when they're out looking for men. They parked down the road near the police station, actually, and then walked separately to the pub. She went in a minute before he saw her at the bar alone for a moment. But then men seemed to flock to her. This barman was new to them, so he went up to the guy and asked to chat in private. Josh told him he was a cop, and they stepped into the back for a bit. He shared what he needed, how he would give a sign, and he agreed. Josh went back out, spotted Linda, and glanced back at the barman, who nodded. Then Josh went to a booth. It was busy at 7:20, but not every booth or table was taken. Linda had company and a Virgin Mary. Josh had told her not to drink if she could avoid it. The first bloke to come up wasn't their target. He was blonde, very tall, and probably married or recently split. His ring finger had no ring but a white strip of skin around it. She spoke to him a bit, and then likely insulted him. He looked at her as if shocked and walked off. She did this another 2 or 3 times until the suspect showed up. Right. Height, glasses, right side parting in his brown hair. He was wearing a sports coat and an open-collared shirt. Josh couldn't tell if he wore black trainers. He didn't sit next to Linda, nor did he approach. He sat 2 stools away. He did order a drink and sipped at it for about 20 minutes, watching the football game on the big screen behind the bar and watching Linda whenever someone walked by to chat her up. I was 20 feet away and my pistol was ready if needed. I could hear Linda when a guy came up to her then. "Hi, I'm James Render. The new guy said he was average height, no glasses, light brown hair, wearing blue jeans and a striped pullover shirt. Sue, nice to meet you." She shook hands with the guy. He seemed friendly enough and no threat. So Sue started chatting to him about which sport was better, football, cricket, basketball, or American football. She ordered another drink, also a virgin, and left sexily looking at her new mate. He started getting a bit fresh, putting his hand on her bare arm, moving a bit closer, but she looked at it and made some joke about not being too forward, and he removed it, only occasionally touching her after. Our guy seemed really into the game above, but I thought he was listening in. He ordered another drink. His first glass stayed at his spot. The barman looked at him. Josh touched his ear, and the barman brought the man another drink. He took away his empty glass. He poured a tonic water for me. He walked to my booth, gave me the drink and a glass. He only held the glass at the bottom. Smart. Linda looked at Josh. He touched his nose. They got what they needed. Soon after, she said sorry to her new mate and left the pub. It was 907. Josh kept an eye on the man. Linda should have been safe by now. The man used his phone for a bit, put money on the bar, and followed Linda out, about 2 minutes behind her. Josh followed him, his glass in the back. No one thought the man might have a mate with him. When Josh got outside, he saw none of them. He was 2 minutes behind Linda and 20 seconds behind the young man. He ran to his car. He checked the GPS in Linda's phone, and it was working. He drove fast, ran a red light in the middle of town, and went towards the signal. Where were they going? Had the young man found Linda outside, put her in a car? No, there was no time. Just enough time to jump in a car and go. They did not know Linda had a mate either. They didn't care about the GPS on the phone, not till Josh saw them. They were on a divided road. It looked like a Mustang to him, but it was dark. He saw it from a half-mile before he caught up. The GPS stopped suddenly, so either they threw it out the window and it broke, or they took out the battery. But he had them in sight, and he was doing what he knew best. He used his phone to call the police, but as he did, the car pulled into a McDonald's car park. It then carefully went over the back curve of the lot and onto a dirt track that led into scrub trees. He saw their lights then, down the road, and they parked by a very small house. He left his car in the lot and ran, talking into his phone, trying to get Terry Jones and any other cop to this place. It was about a quarter mile, and he finally made it, thinking he needed to start jogging more. The car was there, dark. He heard them inside the building. They had lights on. They'd been inside for about 12 minutes now. He went to a window and looked in. Linda wasn't in the kitchen. There was a woman. She looked about 60, mother maybe. She might have been wearing latex gloves. She left the kitchen while he watched, and Josh tried the door. It was unlocked. He slowly opened it, went in, and closed it. He heard heavy steps coming towards him, so he hid behind the fridge, and the woman was back, her back to him, so he hit her over the head with his gun. He gently put her on the floor. He hoped he hadn't killed her. He never hit someone like that before. She was still breathing. He pulled out his cuffs and locked her hand to a unit. He hoped she wouldn't wake up. He didn't need her to alert anyone. There was a young one down the hall. He found the young one with Linda. She was without clothes, laid out on the bed. Josh couldn't stop thinking she looked stunning, even in this bad situation. Her hands were stretched to the corners of the bed and taped down. She was awake but had a gag in her mouth. Her legs were tied with rope at the ankles, her knees bent and tied to the bed, too. The young one was mixing up his method again. He was chatting to her as he got a long stick ready. He put oil on it, but it was just a cheap wood stick with a flat end. "I love you, Sue. I know. You want me. Look at you. Stunning. Just stunning. Are you ready yet?" He moved towards her with the stick in his hand. Josh shot him in the head right then. He'd seen and heard enough. Sue must have, too. Sue's eyes were wide with shock, and in her fear and anger she saw Josh was not a fool, not old, not dumb, and not small. Josh looked at the young one, the mess he'd made of his head, and he felt a bit of peace. He went to his wife. He took off the gag and pulled the tape off her wrists, and her arms wrapped around his neck straight away. He hugged her and liked the feel of her skin, but he wanted to get her out before the police swarmed in. The police sirens were near. She was crying, and then the room filled with police. Josh grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around them as they hugged. The sheriff was there. "Well, I hope he's the one because he's done for now," Josh said. "We didn't know he had help, a sick group." Josh told them everything. That was the full truth. Did he say who he was? He didn't have time. Did he ask the bad guy to give up? No time for that. "Why did you shoot?" "He was about to hurt my wife with a wooden stick." A week later, the person in charge looked at everything, including the 8 crimes and clear DNA matches from the dead man, and showed it to some citizens. The jury decided no charge. The person in charge smiled. Sometimes the law worked. They charged the mum with lots of crimes like planning murder, taking someone, helping and encouraging, and she was sent away for 20 years. But her son was her world, and after his death she nearly gave up. Some people shouldn't be parents. They stayed at home every night until the jury's decision and were glad to be nowhere else. Others might come along. Josh was still thinking about splitting up. But how do you leave a woman when only God knows what's going on in her head? Over the next few weeks, watching TV in the evening became their thing. They would sit together and talk about her latest chat with Dr. Carly, or if he should go with her next time, or if her meds were doing any good, or about his work, the news, or what's happening in the world. They started to cuddle again, like when they were first dating. So for a while it was all about cuddling and remembering. But for Josh, some things wouldn't leave him be. How well was she really? Sometimes when things get really tough, you need to hit pause. He had these images in his mind that were troubling, making it hard to sleep and leaving him unsure. He found it hard to start being intimate after everything that had happened. But then she made the move. One night, a few weeks after that bad time, they were on the sofa getting close like young lovers. He stood up and took off her shirt, and she took off her bra. Linda looked amazing, bare. They kissed, and they finally made love. After they both felt good, they rested for a bit. They were quiet for a while. They snuggled on the sofa. They felt like they were just married. Josh felt she was different with the therapy, the pills. She seemed more connected to the world. She got sad at the end of a sad movie, something he'd never seen before. She showed him a book, let him read some 200 pages and said there was more. She even set a deadline to finish it. Doing well seemed important to her. The doctor mentioned she might write about Linda and her treatment, which Linda was thinking about. We need to talk about what's next. Sitting bare on the sofa, she leaned into him, her hand looking for his in a way they needed as they talked softly. "Do we have a future?" she asked, this time with hope in her voice. Not like before. Could he forgive? Forgetting wasn't possible. He had spoken to a lawyer. The papers were ready if he decided to go ahead. Josh just said, "I got a call from a detective in Branson. He wants us to check out a case there." She looked into his eyes, feeling him relaxed with her. Sometimes marriage isn't easy. Sometimes it's a gamble. No, he thought as he kissed her. It's always a gamble, and it's never easy. Dear listeners, please share what you think below. And don't forget to like, share, and follow Queen Cheating Tales.